So you played against Carlsen.
This was completely crazy.
Did you win?
No. He did lose a piece, but then
Okay,
anyway.
let's see if you
If I can repeat, yes.
And in this moment, I realized this was going to be a very serious game. I already knew that the rating of my opponent was over 2000, but hey, now was time to give my best, to be very focused, and not to get tricked like Magnus Carlsen did.
Did I just blunder?
Yes, I'm a bit easier than Magnus,
Yes.
just slightly though.
Hopefully, yes. Okay, let's see.
So this was round 3 of a tournament in the Club of Bern. It was a 7+3 tournament and I'm facing 1d4. I'm playing something a bit strange with c5 and b5 because I'm not directly controlling the center, but I want to attack the pawn on d5. I want to develop immediately my bishop. And now I was shocked about e4 because the pawn is hanging. But immediately I realized that also my pawn on b5 is hanging. Here I told him that I was scared to take the pawn because I don't want to lose a piece like Magnus. And he said that it's good that you're scared. But no guys, you never have to be scared, just calculate and take the pawn. Because here is the right choice to trade a central pawn for a side pawn. It's very good for me. Now, the question is, and what I was thinking, how to develop my pieces. I noticed that the pawn on d7 is pinned by the bishop. And I didn't like that because I would like to push the pawn on d6 and then develop my knight on d7. So here I played queen b6 to attack the bishop and unpin my pawn. But actually this is a mistake. A better approach would have been to simply try to develop my pieces on the king side, play g6, bishop g7, castle or e6 and unpin the pawn in a natural way. Here I'm moving the queen out too early, also in a position where it's not really annoying. I may be attacking the pawn on b2 at some point, but usually you shouldn't go out with the queen too early. Anyway, here he was thinking, and he had many possible moves, c4 to protect the bishop, but he went for bishop d3, and that's a mistake. And I saw it immediately, there is a pawn on d5 hanging. But I was also shortly calculating, you see my finger moving, knight take f2. And after king take f2, there is c4. But then I saw bishop e3 and I didn't find anything, so I just took the pawn. And here he was super kind because after his next move, he castled the king, he told me, why didn't you take on f2? And basically the point is that after king takes c4, bishop e3, there is queen take b2. And here I realized, oh man, he's really strong. This is good tactics. He said he's not sure if it's very good, but if I take the rook, of course, and my queen can come back, that would be very strong. Anyway, that was interesting. Here I took a free pawn, which is very safe. So now I should just try to find a way to develop all my pieces. And that's what I'm thinking right now. Hey, subscribe so I don't blunder. I was scared of the move c4 anyway and to lose a piece, so I went back with my knight. This is something that anyway I should do at some point because my pieces are hanging a bit in the center of the board. Now I asked him if I was playing better than Magnus. And he said yes, that up to this point I was doing better than Magnus. So that's good. So now of course he has also to think how to develop his pieces. Maybe he can play c4 and knight c3. He has a problem because actually my queen on b6 is looking at b2. So he cannot go out with the bishop easily. So here he went towards the queen. So here we're thinking, how can I develop my pieces? And also I was wondering, but what's the idea of queen e2? Anyway, I want to go out with my bishop and castle, that's very clear. And I have to be a bit careful about knight c6, because there is the move c4, and where is my bishop going? I generally don't like to give away a bishop for a knight, because in that position I would be forced to take on f3. So probably I would go on with bishop e7, castle, bishop back, and then knight c6. Now h3 is a waiting move. not really with a clear idea. At least not as far as I know. Now, after bishop e3, I understood the idea of queen e2, protecting the pawn on b2. And here I had to shortly calculate the move b4. That's why I stopped. Because b4 is exploiting the fact that the pawn is now pinned, because my queen behind would be hanging. But I saw like, okay, after b4, the pawn is attacked twice, but is protected already twice. And at any point I can protect it even more with d6, knight bd7, so maybe even bring a rook to c8. So actually that should be alright. But I was still thinking, because sometimes we tend to overthink during a game. Anyway, finally I castled. And now is his move, is his point to make a decision. Because if he moves the knight to d2, the pawn is hanging. That's why he just went immediately for the move b4. And here I already had in mind my move. I was just checking it one more time, because here you always need to check the move c4. And I played d6 and he went immediately for c4. But that's actually okay for me, because now the pawn on b4 is actually weaker. Now I can take it with the queen. Of course, I first have to move my bishop. I was calculating if I need to go back with the bishop or to take the knight. But I went back with the bishop because it's very strong on this big diagonal. And now my threat is queen take b4. I was thinking maybe he can even play just knight bd2. And if I take on b4, there is rook b1. So it could be very tricky suddenly, because all my pieces are hanging on the b file. But I think here he was thinking... Oh wait, he went actually for this move. This makes lots of sense. I can't take the pawn. That's an oh no my pawn moment. So I just developed my knight immediately. He nodded because I didn't fall for the small trap, of course. Well, not of course. I'm attacking now this pawn one more time, so I'm threatening to take with the knight. Which I believe could be very okay. Because after rook b1, I can move my queen away. After a3, I can take the bishop on d3. So it would be fantastic to take that pawn. So now he has to take care and protect it. So either he plays a3, or he plays rook b1, or he can push the pawn. I think these are the three main options. Okay, he can also capture on c5. And here he was thinking for so long, and I couldn't understand why. Maybe because there are so many options and it's important to make a decision. Because yes, now he pushed the pawn, and this is not coming back from this decision. So my knight now needs to move, and I have a very critical moment because I don't like to go backwards with my pieces. But the square to go forward is on b4. And my knight there can be trapped. Of course, if I play knight b4, a3, I can take the bishop. But I was calculating knight b4, the bishop goes back. Do I have a way to save my knight? Because a3 is the next move. But I went for it because I did some very nice calculation here. And you're going to see the moves that are going to happen in the next moves. Of course, here a3 doesn't make sense because it's not trapping the knight. I can just trade it for the bishop. And guys, in open positions like this one, at some point I can play d5 and the center is going to be completely open. Bishops are very strong. So in this position, bishops are slightly stronger than knights. That's why it's good for him not to trade the bishop on d3. And he's thinking a lot, and then finally went with the bishop back. Now a3 is a big threat, but I calculated a very sweet line. I was just double checking, because here you have to be sure. If you are not sure here, you lose a piece. But then, boom, I went for a6. And now the point is that after a3, I can take on b5. And the pawn is pinned, because the rook behind is hanging. But he's a tactical player and he went for it. I'm taking, pawn takes, rook takes, but I promise, I had calculated everything. And here I even said, oh, you like tactics. Because now we can take back the rook, but we are basically just trading material. It was basically just a trade. After all this trade, it takes back the rook. I still have the extra pawn that I had at the beginning of the game. So this is what happens when there is a crazy tactic, but nothing really happened. We just traded some pieces, but guys, I have an extra pawn, the pawn on d6. So trading pieces, trading material is good for me because I get closer to an endgame where I can try to promote that extra pawn and to get to a nice position. Okay, all the trades are good. Now my queen is also under attack. I can't take the pawn with the queen because the bishop is protecting, so my next move is basically forced. And now I have a pass pawn. Of course, the pawn on c4 is going to fall. He's just deciding, should I take it with the knight? Should I take it with the queen? And he went with the queen, which was slightly a bit of a surprise, because if you take with the knight, you're also attacking my own queen. But now, guys, I have an extra pawn. Is a pass pawn on c5, but how to actually convert this game to a win? That's not easy. Oh, also, I have the bishop here, which... we already talked about it. Bishops are stronger in open positions. So I thought like I have a winning position. I can convert this to a win. But now the question is how? I need to slowly improve all my pieces and make sure I don't blunder because time is getting slowly shorter. You see, 1 minute 50 seconds versus 2 minutes. And yes, there are 3 seconds of increment, but over the board, this is not much time. Alright, the queen went back, of course, and now I feel like my knight on h7 needs to come back, because it's not doing much. So I go with the knight towards the center. It's not clear how to move it forward, because now all the squares are controlled. Of course, now I have to move my queen away. I was shortly scared of knight d5 attacking my queen. That's why I waited to leave the queen on that square. And he went for it, of course. Now, I can move my queen one more time, attacking the knight. And basically here, I would like at some point to start pushing. But every time I push, I'm also making my pawn a bit weaker. Right now, my pawn is attacked 3 times. By the bishop, by the knight, and by the queen. And is protected just twice by the bishop and the queen. So it's a critical moment. What are the moves I can make? Either knight d7 to protect it one more time, or rook c8, or push the pawn. Or go for this aggressive defense, because I'm protecting the pawn, but I'm also offering the trade of a knight. And after the knight takes, I can take back with the bishop, and even if I just have 2 defensor, the knight is pinned. So this is an aggressive way to defend the pawn. And usually it's very important, if you can make a defense while attacking, that's a great deal. By the way, my opponent is under 1 minute. And that's when things get stressful. And you see the stress. The knight is going on c4, blocking my pawn and avoiding trades. Okay, now the question is how to win the game. I think I missed the chance to push my pawn. Probably I should have pushed my pawn on c4. Because every time you can advance the passed pawn, unless you lose it, it's always good. So this was not optimal, my move, because now the knight is blocking my pawn and I have to find another way. As you can see, I'm going for trades, because I know that every time I trade, the position is getting easier for me to convert. If we trade all the pieces, and we just are in the pawn endgames, I'm completely winning in a very simple way. I can just bring the king to support my pass pawn. The white king will have to go to stop my pass pawn. And then I can go with the king to farm all the other pawns on the king side. And I will easily win this game. Look at the time, by the way. It has 15 seconds. And now f4. This move is not good. This move must be bad. Because the king is getting weaker. Remember, pawns are not going back. So you can always move a knight to a wrong square and then okay, you have to waste some tempo and come back. But pawns, they don't go back. So careful with pawn moves. Now I move my bishop back. Maybe I want to go on d4, forcing the trade of bishops. I was in the mode of trading. And he went with the knight, blocking my bishop. Now I went immediately. Hey, look at this. And this is a very good idea. Always improve your worst piece. My rook wasn't playing. Yes, 4 seconds. He made a move with 1 second. Okay, the king is away. And now I have 35 seconds to find my next move. Is not so easy. Maybe I want to try to move my rook, but it's not so easy because I cannot go on a1, a2, a3, a4, a5. So I just removed the knight, which is a mistake. Because, guys, there was a big tactic if the queen would take back. Luckily, took back with the knight. Now I go with the knight attacking the rook, and look at this time. Yeah, he couldn't make the move on time. And guys, this position was still very, very promising for me, but it was still far from being a win. And we did some analysis after the game. He told me like that he was very tired, and actually the big mistake was bishop d3. And that's right. Losing a pawn when you're playing a strong opponent can already be enough to not have a real chance during the game. But he had one! He had one! He had to take back with the queen. If you guys enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you will like this one. Prove it right or prove it wrong. Check it out. You can't let it unverified. Click here.